Hi there, this is Great Johanna speaking for a new live stream podcast episode, this time with sound. I had some sound issues before. And what I want to talk to you about is in this episode, I want to try to focus my mind on what we can still do to save our people living in Europe. So I live in Europe, so I always speak about the European perspective and not so much about the US or British perspective, although I will talk a lot about the Anglosphere because it's so powerful, it's so important. That's why I'm speaking in English to you. Since even people, young people from Greece or Bulgaria will understand me in English and not if I would try to speak German to them. I can speak German, but they wouldn't understand. So I speak English. It's the lingua franca. What do you call it? The universal language that most people can understand. So that's why I do it in English, right? And I want to tell you, I want to transfer this message to you that no matter how bad you think it is, we can still turn the tides. We can still make a stand for ourselves in Europe. We're not going to be replaced with immigration. We're not going to die or collapse. Our economies might collapse, but that's of a secondary issue. Our people will not disappear. We have been the inhabitants of Europe since time immemorial. Some people say even 50,000 years because I read some research. They said that even 50,000 years ago, we find skeletal remains that old that were Homo sapiens carrying DNA for white skin, blue eyes, and so on and so forth. The whole notion that we came from some recent influx of Africans and that we evolved in 8,000 years to look like the way I do is ludicrous. It isn't true. I've gone into this many times before. But before I go on, as you've noticed nowadays on my live streams, I figured out the technology to put a nice painting in the background. So I want to start my live streams with the painting that I've chosen and tell you a little bit about this one. For a moment, I'm going to show you, I'm going to get myself out of the way. I'm going to show you the painting just for a minute. This is the painting called The Symposium by Anselm Feuerbach. He made it in 1874, but it's the second version. The 19th century, ladies and gentlemen, from 1800 to 1900, I think is the best period of European culture. It was peak European culture. Everything was beautiful. All the buildings were nice because people were building things. Artisans were crafting sculptures. Painters were painting because they wanted to leave something that would withstand the test of time. Something that 1,000 years from now, people would still find beautiful. And so that's what they set out to do. In this particular painting, I'll show it one more time here. The figure in the center is apparently Alcibiades and his revelers entering the house of the poet Agathon. Now, I don't know who these people are. But what is interesting, though, is if you look to your left, this guy here. You see this old man with his back toward the viewer and he's having his head down? That's Socrates. Socrates is not really interested in this party and decided that he doesn't really care and so on. Right? I wonder if my... I'm having a look at my comment section and see it's all right. I see some people watching here. That's always great when you're doing a live stream. You want some audience. All right, so what I like about this painting is that it actually comes in two versions. I showed you this one. This is version 1. But 5 years earlier, 1869, Feuerbach produced another version, which was not well received. So let me get myself out of the way and show it to you. Hey, Katja. Yeah, good evening. Yeah. I'm not posting as many videos on my regular TikTok, but I will do a bit more live streams because I try to improve my long form content to do like podcasts and so on. Anyway, here you can see the older version, and this one was not well received because of the colors. They called it icy. Like, what do they call it? Like an ice age arriving at a party. Or here they say, a sea of ice forcing itself undesired into a perfume shop. Okay. And another critic said, so of this version, right? Right, my TikTok, I'm using TikTok Live Studio and it's giving me all sorts of errors. So I hope things are fine now. It says an extreme of ugliness in form and color, which borders on vulgarity and filth, as if Feuerbach had put his paintbrush into ink and calcium instead of color. So they're referring to this this one, and this one, the second version, you can notice what he's done, right? He tried to improve himself, made it all a bit darker, but then he adds the golden chalice, the golden crown, basically, and these golden elements, bringing those out. And honestly speaking, I do like the first version, even though it's supposed to be cold, right? And I don't know. I do like both of them. And either way, like I said, 19th century paintings appeal most to me. They don't have to be too realistic, but they do have to be, well, I don't know, what do you call it? Quality. They're just high quality, right? Someone says, when am I planning to speak to public audiences? I was looking for, in the Netherlands, there are these protests against the asylum centers. I'm looking to go to one of those protests and see if I could do a short little speech before people there. I'm going to start like that, more like a sort of activist, not necessarily in the beer broy kellers or and so on, right? Right. So before I go on about the main topic, which is going to be about what we can do to save our people, I wanted to mention something. I said on TikTok that I believe that, say you grow up with parents who are physically there, they're in the living room, but they don't care to pay attention to you. So they ghost you while you're there. And so you're a little kid, and what do? You want your parents to pay attention to you, at least sometimes, right? And so you try to win your parents' attention, and by becoming more and more active, you become overactive, right? You're constantly trying to win your mom's attention, for example. I said that might be the cause of ADHD. That ADHD in adulthood is when you are still trying to win your parents' attention because they didn't care about you when you were young. And I got really angry responses to this by people saying things like, that's not how it was, that didn't happen to me at all, and I have ADHD. And then I realized something. They were mostly Americans. And the problem with these Americans is, today, 27% of American boys are diagnosed with ADHD. And that's impossible. That many boys can't possibly have ADHD. They don't have ADHD. They are overdiagnosed, probably to sell more medication, because medication in the US is very expensive. So there's an incentive for doctors to sell more diseases, to sell you more medication. And so you're looking at an over-medicated, over-diagnosed nation in the USA, where all of a sudden a quarter of all boys have ADHD. Are you kidding me? Why? Because they can't sit still on a chair in front of their desks in school for 8 hours straight, right? And as soon as they feel a little bit fidgety, or they want to move or dance or get up, oh, you must have ADHD. We need to drug you into submission, right? And that's the problem, right? So that's just a side topic that I wanted to discuss, because I think that a lot of young people are being overdiagnosed. If you look on TikTok, everybody nowadays says they have autism, but they don't. Or they have ADHD, or they have something else that you just don't have. You're being conned into buying expensive medication to drug yourself so that society could deal with you more easily, but that doesn't mean it's normal or healthy, right? Right, 1 to 3% for autism. Yeah, that sounds more believable than what they say it is now, like 20% or so. That's just not possible, right? I'm not German, actually. And I don't know what you mean about my grandparents coming to Africa. They never went to Africa. They introduced Europe to you? Okay, awesome. Weird. Right. Have you ever done combat sports? I used to play lacrosse. That's a contact sport, but not very combat sport. I do boxing sometimes, but it's just myself practicing here. All All right, so the drugs are not too expensive. Okay, but I think in the USA they charge a lot more than in Europe. The prices must be very different there. So I read a statistic that 41% of kids in high schools or primary schools in Vienna are now Muslim. 41% of the kids are Muslim. You can do the math. You can kind of figure out that means 20 years or 30 years from now, that means almost half of the 40 to 50-year-olds in Vienna will be Muslim. And then, of course, the younger generations will be have even higher percentages of Islamic people. It almost is as though you start to think that Muslims are finally going to succeed at winning the siege of Vienna or the Battle of Vienna that happened in the 16th century, like 1571 or so, off the top of my head. I'm not sure if the number is correct. What was it, 1573, where they had the siege of Vienna or the Battle of Vienna? And yeah, someone asks me here, did you go to college? Yeah, I studied strategic business, about the growth of business and so on. But of course, I studied a lot more philosophy in my spare time. Basically, I would nowadays say if you're smart, then university is just going to dumb you down. You don't need to go to university anymore. Just go straight to your employers, like corporations or NGOs or wherever you want to work, and just pitch them your high school record and say, look, I don't want Harvard to dumb me down. I just want to start working on interesting things right away. And I'm sure you can find a better angle there. So I was talking about Vienna, not to get off topic too much. In Vienna, you can guess that in 30 years, over 60% of the entire population will be Muslim, or maybe even more. What will happen to the white minorities living in those places? Or what will happen to the Hindus, for that sake? Right? What will happen to the Asians, the Chinese people living in Vienna? They will be an even smaller minority. Will they be able to coexist with Islam? Islam is not tolerant of minorities. They will force you to become Islamic or cut your head off. They will terrorize you with the jizya. Jizya, do you know what that is? Jizya, it's a obligatory tax for everybody who's not Muslim. So if you're a Christian, you have to pay jizya. But the jizya payments, these taxes, are usually so high, they will bankrupt you. And when you can no longer pay the jizya and you still don't want to convert to Islam, they'll take your daughters, or they'll kill your children, or they'll take your property, or they'll burn down your house. The solution is we in Europe need to understand the following, and this is very important. We don't have to save our cities. If our cities become majority non-European, why would we care for them to exist at all? The way I see it in the future going forward is that Europeans can and will successfully organize themselves. We will basically wake up the normies and transfer our more predatory instincts onto the masses, so that the masses, I've said this before, who now behave as a herd, the normie herd, transform into a wolf pack or a lion pride. I would say lion pride is even more interesting. The European lions have gone extinct, but they may be revived spiritually in our people. And then we can successfully surround the cities, cut off the water supply, cut off the electricity. It's going to be far easier for you to destroy a city if you're not interested in retaking it, but if you know that your goal is to simply drive out who's ever in there, then it becomes a very different game. I remember hearing a story about how once upon a time the Dutch people fought the Spaniards. The Spanish Empire 500 years ago used to be, after the Reconquista, Spain flourished and became a very powerful Catholic reactionary nation, and Spain started to conquer places, and including the Netherlands. And there's a story, however, about how the Dutch people eventually got rid of some of these Spaniards. I'm not sure which battle it was, but there was a small town had been taken by the Spanish, and the Spanish army was basically feeding and sleeping in that small town. The Dutch dug a moat all around town and filled it with oil, flammable oil. And then they just waited. They cut off the supply lines, the food, and they just waited and waited for the Spaniards to get hungry. When the Spaniards got hungry and they charged out of the cities and they waded through these moats that the Dutch had dug and filled with oil. The Dutch set fire to the moats, and they burned all the Spaniards alive. You have to be creative, and creativity in this sense can be very dark and cynical, but it is also necessary to understand we have the right to do whatever it takes to secure the survival of our people, right? Oh, hold on. My phone keeps beeping, and I'm going to turn off the sound for a second because it's annoying. All right. I have a little sip of water. Goth girls are better than blondes, maybe. I'm not here to judge about anything, but I see lots of these gothic girls nowadays also turning far right. So yeah, that's very interesting. Do you believe we can create a pagan Europe? Well, I don't know about that. I very much support the pagan mythology, like the Germanic mythology. I've read all about it, about Odin and so on, Wotan, Odin, Wodan, and I see it more as like you have the Germanic mythology and then the Christian religion go together well. You know, the Germans in the 1930s and so on, they were trying to change Christianity and basically de-Jewify it or de-Judaize it, meaning remove the Jewish philosophical elements from Christianity and then make it Germanic, which I think is also a very good idea. Maybe we can just, it was called German Christendom, Deutsch Christentum. We might simply pick up wherever they left off and continue that process of, of de-Judaizing Christianity. Why not, right? Someone writes here that you are teaching each other to fight, all right? Lots of people are afraid to join. Yeah, I can imagine that, yeah. I don't know why that, man. I don't know why that is. Yeah, Muslims are a billion in numbers. Yeah, so what? You know, so are ants. Ants have like 60 quintillion creatures on Earth. That doesn't mean anything. They are desert people. They have a style of living, and it's also so predictable, really. Look where all the immigrants are living in the Western Europe. They're living in our big cities because it's easy. They have central heating. It's warm. You don't have to travel far. You don't need strong legs to battle on the winds with your bicycle. You know? They have electric bikes now. But if a lot of our luxury amenities would be removed from Western Europe, say there would not be ample heating, very, very quickly, the tropical specimen are not going to live there for very long. They're just going to disappear, right? Does Pope Francis worship Moloch? Maybe. I always thought he was Jewish. So what else can we do? Let's try to focus a little bit on what we can do to save our people in Western Europe. We have the demographic issue, and people don't notice it because if you're stuck in your own age bracket, like me, my age, people in my age bracket in the Netherlands are fairly autochthonous, fairly native, right? To a large degree, but it's the schools where you can see in kindergartens, there's all of a sudden it's like 60% Muslim. The primary school I went to school at is now being converted into, guess what? A school for Muslims, a madrasa, or a school for Muslims, or at least half the building is now being turned into a Muslim section. And that's odd because when I went to school there, that neighborhood was a working class Catholic neighborhood and all the kids were basically Catholic kids. We did those things with Easter. It's now, as soon as Sunday is Easter Sunday, right? Coming Sunday. And we did those rituals. We did our communion there, right? And I don't know the English words for all this process, but we didn't just paint Easter eggs. We had the actual Christian rituals in our classrooms in those days. And now that school is being transitioned into something Islamic because not necessarily that neighborhood is still fairly autochthonous or white. It's just that other neighborhoods have now so many Muslim kids, and they demand their own Islamic school. And so this building was then by the municipality designated as being transformed into a Muslim school. Right. But I think ultimately, I think what I think Europe needs is to learn the lessons from Catholic Spain after the Reconquista, after the Reconquest, when the Muslims were ultimately driven out of Spain, right? And what they did was, right after the Reconquista, which was the beginning of the Spanish Golden Age, the Spaniards told the Muslims still living in Spain and other minorities, you got two choices. You convert to Christianity, or we kill you. Or basically exile you, drive you out. You can't live here. And that is the message for Europe. That's our future. We're not going to go along with Ursula von der Leyen's Talmudic fantasy saying that, she said this a few years ago, this EU Eurocrat. She said, the values of the European Union are the values of the Talmud. No. Talmudic values are basically transgenderism, diversity, LGBTQ, right? No, those are not our values. As though you think the Muslims and the Hindus that they're bringing in, and the atheists and the Buddhists and the Confucianists and the Christians, Catholics and Protestants are all going to want to live together under the umbrella of the Talmud. I don't think so. That's a fantasy. That's never going to happen. The opposite of that, the opposite of the Talmudic values that's Catholic reactionary Christendom. So reactionary Catholicism, you can look this up, because it is a Spanish thing, right? They fought back against Islam and the Jews who let them in at Toledo. So Spanish Catholicism teaches us a lesson that I think we should learn for all of Europe. The day will come where we tell all the minorities in Europe, you can convert to Christianity or get out. We're not going to give you the option of diversity and religious freedom. Religious freedom obviously is a problem that needs to be solved by abolishing it. This is why I dislike the Trump administration so far. The one thing is that he is going after Harvard now, denying Harvard $2 billion in funds, federal funds, because Harvard allowed anti-Semitic people to speak at or to study at Harvard or to start protests against what's happening in Gaza. Now, I don't support Palestine either. The thing is, why doesn't he do this for white people? Why doesn't, or at least for Christians? Why doesn't Trump say, I'm going after people who say anti-Christian things? He doesn't do it. He doesn't withdraw funding from Columbia or Berkeley or any other organization. He doesn't impeach judges for being anti-Christian. He allows all that. He doesn't go after Austin Metcalf's killer. There's this boy, 17-year-old, who was killed at a running track, right, by this guy, Carmelo, whatever, Anthony. And Carmelo Anthony, whatever, Carmelo. Weirdly, the whole Trump Republican system doesn't seem to give a damn about extreme black violence against white people. It doesn't give a damn about extreme religious hatred toward Christian people. That is wrong, right? That is wrong. And I want to leave you here with the message. I'm not going away yet, but I want you to understand this message, a very important message, that although it seems impossible, like there's nothing we can do about it, like that book, that Douglas, sorry, that book that Douglas Murray wrote, The Strange Death of Europe. He doesn't explore options of how to win back Europe, how to make Europe strong again, how to revive Europe, how to, in the spirit of Christ, have that resurrection, the European resurrection, a sort of reconquista, but even better. He just says, no, there's a strange death of Europe, and we don't know why Europe is dying. Right? There's nothing we can do about it. This attitude is deliberate. It's being programmed into your minds to make you believe that there's nothing you can do about anything. Right? Just live in the here and now. Just focus on the things you can change. But that's wrong. Hold on. A month ago, I had some kind of a pneumonia or something. I had some dust probably that I inhaled. It got into my lungs, and I got really sick for 2 weeks. So I thought I think I'm almost better now, but I apparently sometimes need to cough a little bit. I hope it doesn't disturb you too much. Right. Right. You notice this attitude, the attitude of there's nothing we can do about it. You know, nothing will ever change, you know. This is funny. So here's a Dutch fellow. I think he's like your Polish origin Dutch fellow. Yeah, but the truth is, if you go to the Netherlands, we have a high school system of different levels. The highest level is called like gymnasium or so, or atheneum. The thing is, when you look at the higher levels, if you happen to bike past these higher level schools, they're almost all white. And when you go to the lower levels, they're almost all black and brown. It's extremely stereotypical, but it's just the truth. And this is despite all the positive discrimination, like the affirmative action, trying to get all these brown kids into the smarter schools. And despite all that, they still have not managed to, you know, upgrade them. It's so silly. Yeah, but Polish people are our allies. See, white Polish people. Do you know the story of what the Polish people did for us? Of Jan Sobieski III. It was during that siege of Vienna, or the Battle of Vienna. I think it was the siege of Vienna. And ultimately, the European forces were unable to drive out the Ottoman Turks, the Ottoman Muslims. And Jan Sobieski, there's a movie about this. It's such a great movie. Let me see if I can Google it for you. Jan Sobieski III. There was a movie. The Day of the Siege, September 11. Here we go. Oh, this is such a good movie. It's a Polish movie. It's totally unapologetic. It's brutal. It's a low budget movie, but they did their best, and at least the story is. There's an English version of it, or at least parts of it are in English, and it's about this Christian priest rallying the people. Let's go and kill the enemy. The Polish hussars, exactly. They came to the rescue, and they helped us drive out the Ottomans out of Europe. And you should watch this movie. It came out in 2012, so it's 13 years old. But the Day of the Siege. Go and watch that one if you can find it. It's such a good movie, because it's a movie about basically slaughtering Muslims and driving them out of Europe, and totally unapologetically. Yeah, that's a really a great 2 hours to spend your life. You know. What else? What else can we do for ourselves? It's all about attitude. I've noticed that. Lately, I've been around like these normie people. They're so confused. I think they just don't understand the world, or maybe they are the ones who perceive everything in black and white. So I'm talking about leftist normies, who vote socialist, right? Who live off welfare. These kinds of people, they are the ones who see the world in black and white. They perceive our weird LGBTQ stuff as normal and safe, and then they perceive people who don't like that as terribly evil and bad people, like Orban is bad. Right? The leader of Hungary, Viktor Orban, he passed a law now that says that pride parades are somehow outlawed or something like it, or the transgender school curriculum is completely banned in Hungary. It's the only European country doing this, because earlier this year, or even last year, the Polish government was overthrown, and I think it was they got a lot of these socialist leaders in now. They also start pushing the LGBT. But the thing is, it's the only country in Europe, Hungary, just 10 million people, right, who are doing the right thing of protecting their children from evil. Everybody else seems to be possessed by this Satanism, And I think that is, to a large degree, also that difference between the Talmud and, say, Old Testament values. I say Old Testament because if you look at the Jewish people, it's not true that they are one group. They are many different groups, but the most important ones are the Talmudists, basically the leftist, Bolshevik, communist, socialist, gay, transgender, pedo, Talmudists. And on the other hand, you have the Zionist supremacists. I can't say the Z word more than once, or my live stream will shut down. You have the right-wing nationalistic, Netanyahu-loving tribe. They do kind of base what they do on the Old Testament. But the thing is that the Old Testament also became the most important book to the Protestants. So the Protestants have something in common a little bit with the Zionist Jays, with the Zio Jays. That's because I think the boomer Christians in the USA, who are now in their 60s and 70s and so on, and 80s, the boomer Christians, they think they still need to care about Israel because that's where Jerusalem is. And we have to defend Jerusalem. They see it as a Christian ideal to support Israel. And when the boomer Christians die out, that support disappears. Nowhere in the world will you have a rich tax base who will give a damn about Israel. And that means when the boomers phase out, and the Americans are going to be largely anti-Israel. And that's going to change a lot, because where on earth will the Israeli, hyper-nationalists, where on earth will they win the support for their cause? Well, nowhere. Europe is turning Talmudic, apparently, so it's going to be a communist shithole for a while. And then, but not forever. I told you earlier that this idea that, there's nothing we can do about the collapse of Europe, that's nonsense. We can still, why do you think they fear us so much? Why do you think there's so much propaganda directed against us? It is precisely because we can still do something about it, and they know it. It's just that many of our people don't know, or are too afraid to think like that. And we need to wake our people up, right? Yeah, in a way, the boomer generation is holding stuff up. They're like a dam holding water, but the water is life. Get it? So the boomers are a dam, and they're holding back the life that they're supposed to give to the newer generations, so that we can then very quickly be strong and fruitful again, and populate our rural towns, and with tons of kids, with 7 kids for each woman, right? And then we're going to clear out our big cities, basically. That's the goal. We have to do it. We have to accept that our big cities are just a lost cause. Now, we might secure the art and the paintings and the statues and take them somewhere for our safety, but, in the end, it's not our statues that we're trying to protect. It's not our paintings that we're trying to save. It's not even the music we're trying to preserve. We're trying to preserve our people, and from our people, downstream, you'll find our creativity. And downstream from that, you'll find new paintings, new art, and new music that will all be of the same superior quality as what we heard during the 19th century, right? And that's how it goes, right? Yeah, I don't support the Middle East at all. So why would I be a Z or a whatever? It may sound strange to you, but I can just be pro-Europe, and that's it. I don't have to be, I can be pro-European and pro-European Christianity and so on. I don't have to pick a side in the whole Middle Eastern conflict, because I don't even care about the Middle East at all, right? It may sound as a surprise to you, but it's just how it is, Yeah, white Muslims, they were, like in Albania, they were actually conquered by the Turkish Ottomans and then forcefully converted. So we can do that. We can forcefully convert them back to Christianity. You can be pro our tribe, yeah. We don't have to be for anybody else anymore. This is the strange thing about white people in general. We care so much about what goes on in Sudan. They call Sudan, what's going on in Sudan is a war. 150,000 people are dead there. 12 million of refugees. So guess what they're going to do now? Right? They're going to send Sudanese people to Europe. Now we'll have to take care of the Sudanese people. Jesus Christ. They call it the worst humanitarian crisis in Sudan, right? We shouldn't have to care. In Ukraine, the past 3 years, almost 500,000 to 1,000,000 men died. They never released the statistics because it's so goddamn awful. It's up to 1,000,000 men, on both sides included. 1,000,000, mostly white men, and some North Koreans mixed in, and some whatever's mixed in. But it's mostly white men who did the dying there. And no one cares. Like, they don't even count us as casualties, because we're not even human to them. We're just clay to them. We're mud to them, right? Someone on Twitter today mentioned this, like, this is why you don't want to have racial aliens as your leaders. Like Zelensky is Jewish. They don't care, because they see us as clay, as mud, and they'll kill us off, to do whatever they want, right? We can't do this. We can't allow this to happen anymore. We need to get our senses back. And because the reason why I think, globalists fear us so much is that they know a little more about us than we are willing to say about ourselves. Why would they keep aggressively accusing us of being white supremacists? Is it because they really believe we are in some way superior? And is that why they're trying to push the LGBT onto us, and the diversity, and the multiculturalism, and the individualism specifically, to break us apart, right? And so that we cannot form alliances and groups and fight back as a white race group, right? I think they feared that. I think they know very well that that's exactly what we are capable of. We are certainly capable of defending Europe, driving out our enemies, and standing up for ourselves. And they know it, and that's why they fear us so much. And that's why they pour in basically infinity dollars from the printing presses into destroying us in every possible way. That's why they support black kids stabbing white kids. They do a give, send, go, or a GoFundMe for the killer, right? I'm going to take a sip. Yeah, we're smart enough to stop it. There are those among us who are very smart. Like, do you know Homath? You know Homath probably from his videos about women and dating and so on. But if you follow Homath on his Twitter, this guy is extremely right-wing on our side. He wants to, just like we all, drive out the enemies. There's plenty of us who are very smart, but who may have been tied up in other things to do. Career, work, business, writing books, whatever. And if just a handful of those would wake up and start using their influence skills to transfer their own strengths, your own aggression, perhaps your hate, onto the masses, to transform the herd into a wolf pack or a lion pride, it's possible. This is how it's always done. This is why they always say they fear populism so much. What is populism? Populism is when the people stand up for themselves, which is what needs to be done right now. Then we will prove it. If you think you're superior, just prove it. Then we will prove it. Yeah, what's the point? Right. I'm just reading through your comments a little bit. I try to keep it more interactive, but let's see how this goes, right? You can, by the way, you can follow me on my newsletter. My Substack is at jmk.info. And there you will also find my links to everything else. I got books. You can find my books there, my music, whatever, right? All right. Scientific evidence, don't worry about it. It will be written in blood. Yeah, Charles Martel today would be very disappointed with this country. But so all the others, Arminius, if Arminius of the Germans had seen what happened to Germany today, or if Vercingétorix had seen what happened to France or to Paris, because he was from the Parisi tribe, I believe. Paris is named after the Parisi tribe. Actually, that was a Germanic tribe, the Parisi. And then you have all the other ones, yeah? Caesar, Julius Caesar. What if he could see what happened to Rome today, man? Fucking slum. right? Jan Sobieski. What did all these men fight for? Right? All these heroes, right? Or the Vikings who settled in Normandy. That's why Normandy, Northmen. Yeah, Normandy is named after the Northmen who settled there from Denmark and Norway and so on. What Rollo? Have you heard of the Viking named Rollo? Rollo, the Viking, he married a Parisian royalty and started that lineage that eventually became the British royalty. So, and it started out as a Viking, yeah. So that's what we want. Hold on. Yeah, this is a great topic. You know who else used to talk about the old heroes? Jonathan Bowden, the far right English orator, if you've heard of him. He would speak about Thomas Carlyle, H.P. Lovecraft. It turns out that in the early 20th century, in the English sphere, the Anglosphere, there were tons of very far right book authors who left their books behind. You can still read them, like the author of Kull the Conqueror and Conan the Barbarian. You must know those. All right. I think this is also important that we start telling each other about our ancestors, about what they were able to do, what they did for us, what they did for themselves, how they handled these difficult situations where they were besieged. Like in Bulgaria, there's a story called by Ivan Vasov. It's like the first Bulgarian novel ever written. And it's about how the Turkish Ottoman Muslims, they conquered Turkey for 500 years, right? And the book is called Under the Yoke by Ivan Vasov, Bulgarian author. And under the yoke of the Turks, the story is about how they never gave up. And eventually, with the help of the Russians though, but eventually they drove out the Turks out of Bulgaria. And these are the stories that matter, right? Or the story of Rodriguez, or what was he called? I don't remember all of them by heart, but you know what? In the next episode, I'm going to prepare myself a bit better so I figure out all the names of the heroes, you know, how they did the Reconquista and how they fought back and how they achieved all that. It's very important to know these things, right? That we have a history of standing up for ourselves, or like the Spartans at the Hot Gates, the Thermopylae. That's a true story. They really did stop the Persian hordes from invading Europe. All right. I don't know what to say about esoteric beliefs. I don't really know anything about this. People were commenting how smart I am, how I know about everything, but I don't. I don't know about the esotericism or so. It's not really my thing. H.G. Wells, yeah. All right. I don't think we need to go either of these ways that H.G. Wells predicted we would either be civilized but weak or cannibalistic and strong, right? No, I think Europeans can be definitely predators, strong, physically brutal, right? And then use our aggression to simply build a whole new civilization that will make everyone else feel ashamed of themselves again. All right. I definitely would not want to be part of the weak but civilized urban dwellers. No, we will be the barbarians at the gates, preferably. All right. No, I don't believe in horoscopes, man. So I think the modern Catholic Church has betrayed Europeans, yeah. So did you know that Pope Francis met with the then French President François Hollande before Macron, and literally said that Europe needs a rejuvenation, by which he meant Europe needs to be flooded and gang raped by Muslim youths and black youths, right? That's just something we're just not going to allow. That a lot of these things, a lot of these globalists, they have the skill, the mastery at presenting ideas that they want you to believe are inevitable. There's nothing we can do about it. This is how it's going to be. And when you puncture through that, even one person, if even one person would stand up and say, hey, that's bullshit, then the whole house of cards will come crashing down. It's just not what we're not going to do this. We're not going to turn Europe into a transgender, gay, pedo, diverse, multicultural Hindustan Islamic alliance or something. No, we're going to make this our own again. And that's just for a while. You know, Europeans, I never believe in foreverism. So do you know what I mean by that? Foreverism. It's oh, we have to unite all the Europeans and then say, but we don't want to live as a united Europe. But it's not forever. It's temporary. For a while, we will. See, it's always like that. I see history more as maybe it can be waves or cycles or movements that can repeat each other, and sometimes they do change and it goes another way. But I don't really see history as a line from primitive to advanced, or from zero to infinity, or from nothing to everything. I see history more as a sort of organic development where there's a push and pull between your group and all other groups. And depending on how strong you are, you can control more of where you want to go and what you want to do. And that's what I want to focus on. I want the white people of Europe to focus on developing their strengths, their skills, their abilities, their prowess, physically and mentally, and in any other way, spiritually also, very importantly. And then we make ourselves strong enough so that we can do what we want to do in this great push and pull with all the others. So we create room for ourselves, basically tell people to move back for a bit so we can develop ourselves, unfold our desires, right? Pursue our needs, have our needs met, but aggressively, because we're no longer going to ask for permission. We're no longer going to feel sorry about colonialism and slavery. Right? I also have a habit of looking at other people, such as the Africans, the Muslims, the Turks, the Russians, and I'm wondering, what would they want? What are their desires and needs and their goals? I think a lot of the former colonies are looking at a weak Europe and they're fantasizing about having revenge for colonialism, right? And so are the Turkish people, the Turkish leadership. They're fantasizing about rebuilding the Ottoman Empire and conquering the European colonies they used to have, like Greece, Bulgaria, Hungary was all part of the Ottoman Empire, right? Russia may want to restore their own old Russian Empire and basically annex most of Eastern Europe again, or at least even Poland, right? And so all these parties, Algeria, a North African country, they are actually building up their army right now. They may want to take France and make France Algeria's bitch, right? That doesn't mean they will succeed for all sorts of reasons. First of all, they have too many people that Europe can never feed. There would be a mass starvation event in Europe if all those kind of people would flood into Europe. We literally can't feed them. And then there's also this matter of that the people who have been here, our people, have clearly evolutionary advantages to being here. Things that are now dormant, asleep, like sleeping gods, sleeping giants, that may be awoken precisely only in that moment where our survival is truly coming under threat. Then all of a sudden, things will change. Like, why do you think that the censors of the global internet, these globalists, these EU people, the commissars, they always want to censor speech on the internet? Why is that? Because certain ideas, a specific idea, can spread like a wildfire across the internet. And if it's the right idea at the right time, our people will respond to it and they will wake up and internalize it and feel, yeah, this is what we need to do. We're waiting for that. We have to build up to that moment where not one, but several really good messages start spreading like wildfire to inspire in our people a desire to fight back. And I think that time is not going to be that far away. It's going to be fairly soon, right? Yeah. Everybody always talks about white supremacy. Yeah. And so that's why I start thinking that you really believe that. Yeah, love from the UK. Yeah, United Kingdom at the moment is so horrible. Like you can't do or say anything anymore. Um, you're just required to be a slave and to shut up, right? That's just terrible. Metal music, yeah, I do like Rammstein a bit, but yeah, it's not my favorite brand or something. But you know, Rammstein is fine, right? Although a bit weird sometimes. If you listen to the lyrics, it's not exactly healthy. Mm, what will happen when the non-white population of Earth will grow and white people will be less? Well, that's already happened. White people are just 7% of the globe, or anywhere between 7 to 12%, depending on who you classify as white. But the actual like the Northwest European type whites, the ones that you see in the movies, yeah, it's like right, it's like 7 8%. It's low. We are a global minority, but we're still here. And despite being this global minority, we still win most gold medals at the Olympics, both the summer and the winter Olympics. So you tell me, we have a physical ability here and a mental prowess. We are the ones who brought forth the most important philosophers and so on. And you should follow Ricardo Duchesne on Twitter. He always talks about he's not even pure white. It's not that I care, but the guy is a bit Hispanic or something from Brazil, I think. But he writes all the time on Twitter about all white people's achievements, and it's just astonishing what we've brought forth just in the past 500 years, and even before that. We invented almost everything, and then people say, "Oh, but the Chinese invented gunpowder." Yeah, so what? Almost everything else was invented by Europeans, and Europeans independently from China also invented gunpowder on their own. They didn't need to learn that from the Chinese. They invented it themselves, and so on and so forth. It's just a string of this explosive burst of creativity, the desire to explore, the desire to use resources to do something with the resources, right? Africans always say that we stole their resources, but why didn't they do anything with their resources for 300,000 years until Europeans showed them how to do it? Europeans even had to dig up the resources, right, that the Africans never even went looking for. And that's the sad reality. We are dealing with people accusing us of things, then they should have just done those things themselves. Like, why are Indian people jealous or angry at Western countries? Indians have been living in India for, I don't know, thousands and thousands of years. How come they never built something like the British Empire themselves? Why did they wait for the British to come to them first, right? Why is that our fault? Did you see the statue they built in Texas? Indian people built a huge statue, larger, taller than the Statue of Liberty. And it's some kind of goddamn ape. Like it's like literally from the Planet of the Apes. They made a statue of an ape creature with an apish face that they worship. And then they demand us to treat them equally because we can't be racist toward them. And I'm like, dude, you worship an ape. We don't do that. Our God is not an animal. See, we don't worship an animal, right? We're not equal, right? So it's not really our fault anymore. It has never been our fault. It's not our problem. Yeah, is there one of those statues in South Africa too? It's just bizarre. Like, say what you want about Christianity, but at least it's a God that looks human. Right. Yeah, why should we live with them if they don't even want to live with their own? Right? Did you know the German Bavarian prime minister? They have like Germany has several Bundesländer, right, provinces, and each province has its own prime minister. So the prime minister of Bavaria, Markus Söder, he went to India on a trip, probably to get business or to tell which migrants to send to Germany. And he got sick with gastrointestinal diarrhea because of the food he was eating in India. Come on, that place is not healthy, man. We don't need to be like them, and there's nothing we can learn from them. Why do we still call them migrants? Can you feel where I'm getting at? Why do we still call these people immigrants? We should call them slaves, because that's what they really are. They are slaves. They are doing our low-cost jobs and the jobs we don't want to pay for anymore. We're trying to get cheap Indians and cheap Africans and so on, and cheap Arabs. That's what they really are. They're just slaves. You know, it makes no sense to keep pretending as though they're our equals. They're not. You know, we don't go to India to be their cleaners. They come to us to be our cleaners. So they're our slaves. Yeah, I discussed the background at the start of this episode. It's the Symposium. It's a painting by Anselm Feuerbach, a German painter. He made it in 1874. And can you see this old guy over here with his back toward the audience and his head down? That's supposed to be Socrates. I like putting up a painting as my backdrop because it also offers you like a sort of instant thumbnail for YouTube, so I don't have to put too much effort into a thumbnail. I like to make things streamlined and easy for myself. Yeah, I don't get that many viewers on YouTube anyway. It's more like 100 views for a video or so, but I do like the interaction I get on TikTok, so that's why I wouldn't consider myself extreme. I'm just an ethno-nationalist. What's the opposite of extreme that we call them? They're just weak. They have soy socialism. We just have normal nationalism. What's the problem, right? I'm being insensitive here. Yeah, contrary to popular belief, most Europeans don't like or eat spicy foods. So we didn't go to the East Indies for spices. We went there for other things. Eh? We don't eat that stuff. All right. I usually try to fill an hour. I've been speaking or recording at least for some 57 minutes or so. I'll do a little bit of talk here and there. And I'll chat with the audience a little bit, and then I'm going to wrap it up. You can go to my Twitter at JohannesMKX. Go to my YouTube at The Great Johannes. You've got my TikTok here. And you can also buymeacoffee.com/JohannesMK. Support me there if you want. And you can also go to my newsletter at jmk.info, which is my Substack, where you can then also subscribe if you want to, or just read the articles that I post there. Lately, I've been writing a bunch of articles, and I do a lot of these things. I do the live stream. I write newsletters. I used to write a ton of books, but I figured that when it comes to writing books, if you want to have success with books, you first need to have a very large following in the world, online, for example, as in millions, right? You need to have millions of followers, a real good following. Then you can get a book deal, write a book, because then you have people who will buy it, right? Otherwise, I would just be writing books for like an intellectual exercise that I do find enjoyable myself. I find it enjoyable to write a book and then in the editing phase, perfect every sentence, right? And every paragraph. And I know I didn't do it perfectly, but I do find that an interesting intellectual pursuit. But over time, I can't keep doing that if I don't make any money, right? So I can't just keep writing books for no audience. I first need to get the audience, and then maybe later in my life, I will write more new books if I know that I have an audience who will buy. Then it will make sense. I can get a book deal. A book deal means they give you 300,000 euros and say, okay, you can spend a year or two writing a book. I would love to do that. I would love a book deal where they just give me money up front and then I go write a book. I would love to do that. Yeah. So maybe someday I'll get that opportunity where I get a book deal and I can just spend two years on an island, right? Enjoying myself, doing sports, and then writing the book in the afternoons or so, in the sun somewhere, right? All right. I have heard of What If Alt Hist, yeah. I don't know if I'm a big fan of it. I did like some of it, yeah. Right. Yeah, I'm on Twitter. Thoughts on Alice Weidel? Weird. Yeah, why is she the leader? I like the AFD, but why is she the leader? She's like a lesbian Married to a brown woman from Sri Lanka. What for? You know, what are you trying to push here? You know, what's this all about? I think it's just so weird. I have heard of Carl Schmitt. Yeah, I've read one book by him, I suppose. Yeah. All right. How many followers do I have on this channel? 60,000 or so. But I lost accounts. I lost one account with 50,000. I lost another one with 30,000. They keep banning me all the time, so I never really get too far in terms of followers on TikTok. It's very hard to do if you are a radical person. If you're an outspoken person, you get banned all the time on TikTok. It's so frustrating, but I've never given up. I must have lost more than 14 or 15 accounts on this app due to the banning and the reporting all the time. Although recently, lately, the past 6 months or so, it's been going quite well. I've only had one video taken down, one strike. It seems that either I've gotten the hang of rephrasing my words better so that I don't get banned, or maybe the TikTok algorithm changed. And I think both happened. I think the TikTok algorithm did change to the benefit of people, especially since the Trump election. I think the Trump administration pushed TikTok a little bit to allow a little bit more freedom of speech because it's in the benefit of his policy, right? And that's why I think I'm getting away with it for a little bit now. All right. Yeah, TikTok targets everyone, man. TikTok targets, if you want to talk about anything at all that isn't mainstream, you can get banned. All right. I'm pushing the white revival, the revival of the West, the reconquista of Europe. Yeah. No, I'm not going to be more inclusive for a book deal. That will be selling out, see? It's not like, you know, there's not enough people in the West. There's enough people in the West to buy a book, man. Yeah, Belarus just announced that they're going to bring in 150,000 Indians. Like I said, slave workers. They're slaves. But still, it's a bad idea because guys, it's going to be mostly men and single men. They're going to be raping women there. It's going to be disgusting, man. Like, why are all countries doing this? All of them are doing this, you know? There's something wrong with the world that needs to be aggressively healed. I think Trump is a Zionist, so he has a special interest. He doesn't protect white people, for example. Trump doesn't stand up for anti-Christian hate speech, but he does deport you for being anti-Semitic. So that's really weird about Trump. Like, why is Trump sucking Jew dick? Why doesn't he stand up for Christians? If TikTok shut me down, I would just come back with a VPN if necessary, but I will always come back. All right. I'm gonna start wrapping it up. It's enough for today. I will do it more often. I'm gonna focus a bit more on long form content. Like I said, maybe I'm gonna try to do interviews with people, get some people maybe here on the TikTok app. We could do like a dual stream, dual live. And until then, I wish you all the best, and I'll see you soon. Just keep following this account, and you can get notifications if I go live again. And thank you for watching.